So welcome, folks who are here this morning, for folks who are watching this later. We are joyfully studying the 7 points of mind training, or Lojong. Lojong is an extraordinary lifelong practice of training the mind to keep in the forefront of our mind our bodhicitta, or our innate loving kindness and compassion, and to practice to have it both reveal itself and become our mind stream's normal space. So an effortless bodhicitta. So let's see if we can get back to, I have to get back to my screen in order to read the morning prayers. So we begin with opening prayers, and then I'll talk about today's slogan, Slogan 42, and then we'll have practice and discussion. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. I'm having a little technical difficulty this morning. Every once in a while, Facebook updates or Zoom updates. And so I couldn't come back from checking that Facebook was live. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. As earth and the other elements, together with space, eternally provide sustenance in many ways for the countless sentient beings, so may I become sustenance in every way for sentient beings to the limits of space until all have attained nirvana. As the Sugatas of old gave birth to the bodhicitta and progressively established themselves in the training of a bodhisattva, so I too, for the benefit of beings, shall give birth to that bodhicitta and progressively train myself in that discipline. At this moment, my life has become fruitful. I have realized my human life. Today I am born into the family of the Buddhas. Now I am a child of the Buddhas. From now on, I will forthrightly perform the actions befitting my family. I will act so as not to degrade the faultlessness and discipline of my family. Just as with a blind man finding a jewel in a heap of dust, thus somehow bodhicitta has been born in me. This is the supreme Amrita which destroys death, the inexhaustible treasure which removes the world's poverty. It is the supreme medicine which cures the world's sickness, the tree which provides rest for beings weary of wandering on the paths of existence. It is the universal bridge on which all travelers may pass over the lower realms, the rising moon of mind which dispels the torment of the kleshas. It is the great sun which puts an end to the obscurity of ignorance, the pure butter which comes of churning the milk of the holy Dharma. For travelers wandering the paths of existence, seeking happiness from objects of enjoyment, it is supreme bliss near at hand, the great feast which satisfies sentient beings. Today, witnessed by all the protectors, I have welcomed the sentient beings and Sugatas, Devas, and Asuras rejoice. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So, good morning. It's lovely to work with this extraordinary teaching again. I'm going to put our slogan for today in the chat box. Technically, we're working with slogan 42, 2 activities, one in the beginning and one in the end. But I am going to connect that to a slogan that comes in a few lines down, because all of these slogans really are relating to make this your life's work, your life's practice. And so a few lines down, I think it's 45 or 46, train in the 3 difficulties. See the neurosis as neurosis, be willing to do something different, and make this a way of life. So this whole section, the 7th section of the 7 points of mind training, all have to do with making this a way of life and really helping us understand that this is difficult to do. So it says train in the 3 difficulties. So we're starting to really approach our life differently. We're looking at the cultural values we started with. We're looking at the cultural values we created along the way, our personal values. And now we're saying through the Dharma, we can see that there are many things that we've learned along the way that don't make our lives more peaceful, don't make our mind more peaceful, and don't help in our relationship with friends and family and the people we encounter, but even make that more difficult. So it is difficult to change. I was reading an article by someone who was on the faculty at Yale who works with the parenting department. And it's where you bring your children when you essentially give up, when they're out of control tantrums and you just don't know what to do. So it's this expert parenting. And it made me think that a lot of what we are doing as Dharma students have to do with reparenting ourselves. If we grew up without our parents' confusion, what might they have taught us? And if we didn't take in those voices, as sensitive young beings, we might have taken in the yelling, not the praise. And then we have an inner narrative that's always scolding us. So how do we reparent ourselves in the Dharma? And what was lovely about their recommendations, it was essentially to be gentle and just keep reinforcing the positive. And so with this slogan, 2 activities, one in the beginning and one in the end, we're talking about, okay, we're changing the way we're living, we're making this our way of life, but we do this one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. But if we were to look at a day, how might we affect change in our day? And so at the beginning of the day, the practice is recommending a bodhicitta practice. So at the beginning of the day, we're reminding ourselves that innately we are compassionate and kind, and whatever situation we're in, with a cautious mindfulness throughout the day, we can hold on to our first practice in the morning, which is sitting in that compassion, sitting in that loving kindness. It might be a long practice, or it might be just reciting the opening prayers that we did just now, or the 4 immeasurables. So then we have that beginning, and we're setting our intention for the day. And then at the end of the day, we review. And we review, as Yale recommends, by seeing the positive in terms of, well, we did start out the day in the way that would help us. And imperfect as we are, there were probably times where we remembered that intention or connected just naturally to that intention. And there were times where we were overwhelmed by our habitual patterns. So then, reparenting ourselves, how do we look at those habitual patterns? We look at those habitual patterns with curiosity, not with scolding, shaming, guilt-inducing, but how interesting. Every time I get to this point, my habitual patterns take over. Can I really look with curiosity at that habitual pattern? What are my thoughts? What is the tape that says, oh, you have to take care of yourself first? You need this right now. You deserve this right now. You have to just protect yourself right now. We might have, each person has a whole different framework of thoughts that are associated with a habitual pattern, and we also have emotions that are associated with a habitual pattern. So what are the feelings that go along with those thoughts? Now, the interesting thing about starting with bodhicitta at the beginning of the day, certainly there is relative bodhicitta, that quality of resting in your sense of feeling open and friendly towards the world and all the inhabitants. But there's also the ultimate bodhicitta that is beginning to recognize, well, my thoughts are impermanent. My thoughts come and go. They don't stay the same unless I intentionally restart that tape over and over and over again. We used to always record things on, on those little cassette tapes. So we would rewind, start again, rewind, start again. Unless we rewind and start again the habitual pattern of thoughts, they don't keep going. And then we have the emotions. And when we look at the emotion, we can see, well, that doesn't stay forever either. It's connected with the thoughts. It's connected with the body. It ebbs and flows in terms of strength. So then, looking at the habitual pattern that we've selected to review at the end of the day, we can start to say, just with curiosity, okay, I can recognize my thoughts, I can recognize the emotions, but what is that turning point that pivots me away from the intention and allows the habitual pattern to take over? What can I learn about that pivoting point where essentially I just give up? I give up the intention, I give up moving towards my Buddha nature through this moment of my day, and I go right into the habitual pattern, just sliding right into it. And that's That's our way of learning, without a harshness, but with a curiosity and a sensitiveness and an approach of, I'm going to learn my mind. I'm going to learn, what it is that this has me stuck day after day after day. And one of the texts was saying, this is the time to bring in a lot of support. When we see this point, we recognize this point, it's probably quite a tender point, then to bring in immediately reminders. I have encountered the Dharma in this life. I understand that I'm in samsara over and over again, propelled into samsara through these habitual patterns. But this life, I have my teachers, the Dharma and the Sangha. This time, I have the resources to find the way out. And from the Tibetan perspective, this time I have the protection of the Dharma protectors. Each of the lineages has great beings who have their aspiration to protect the practice of people who are working with the Dharma, to give us strength when we're in these tender points. And then I have all the virtue I've accumulated up until this moment, and since we're continuously dedicating our merit with each practice we do, this is the time where we remember, oh, I've participated in accumulating merit. Can I think of the strength of the ground that I'm standing on? So I will call to my mind these strengths to be with me as I meet this tender point, as I prepare myself for the next day. And then the next day we begin again. So over and over and over, we really pour out this loving kindness towards ourselves and others, and this reminder that this life is special. This life, we have extraordinary resources and support. So I want to, we've done a lot of exploration in the last couple of classes. I want to take this moment for you to experience what is it like, since we're, pretty much at the beginning of the day today, to really see what it's like to set a habit for yourselves of one in the beginning. And since we're, close to last night, also, you might take in a slight practice of, well, if I reviewed yesterday, how might I have looked at habitual patterns taking over, and how might I today see that tender point? I think most of us have really absorbed these teachings, so we're learning to pause. But what might I do in that pause? How do I work with relative bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta, and bringing a reminder of the three jewels and the Dharma teachings into that pause? So I'm going to give maybe till 10:30 for us to just contemplate that, and then we'll have discussion. So the question we're asking is, when we're reviewing without shaming, guilting, how do we reparent ourselves into Dharma wisdom to work with our habitual tapes? So as you're thinking about this, I'm going to describe to you how they work with it at the parenting lab. So let's say a child has extreme tantrums. The first step is to ask the child, honey, can you demonstrate a tantrum? Can you get right into it? Can you just act it out? But don't hit your mother, your father, or your sister while you're having the tantrum. And the child responds in a really natural way. Yes, I can do that. I can get angry and scream and yell on the floor like I'm having a tantrum. I can do that without hitting anyone. And so they let the child have a full tantrum, acting it out. And then they say, oh, honey, it was so wonderful. You did that so well, and you didn't hit anybody. You didn't hit your mother. You didn't hit your father. You didn't have your sister hit your sister. So what if we approached our habitual patterns with that wisdom and gentleness, whatever habitual pattern you're working with, and looking at 1 degree of difference and then praising that 1 degree of difference over and over and over again. So contemplate it from that perspective. And the other instruction from the parenting lab is to never give up focusing on the positive. That is what affects change. So I'm going to close the Facebook Live portion with a quick dedication first. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. And I'm going to open up the chat room for discussion. I don't know what happens technically. I used to know where that was. Oh, there it is. Okay. If you don't wish to go into the chat room, if you rather sit and contemplate, you're absolutely welcome to do that. And if you'd like to share what you're learning, it's been very helpful, and I want to make sure the Shire folks have a chance to discuss as well.